Hello, you're listening to our PAC Politics Podcast. Our podcast is brought to you by our United Resource PAC. We are a tax exempt political organization. I am your host, Brittany McDowell. Thank you so much for tuning in for yet another episode. Guys, we're talking about a high-ranking killer. Now, there's also another question. Will Nancy listen? There is a new leading cause of death for Americans this year, and I promise you it's not Nancy Pelosi. But we are going to kind of examine the question, is Nancy Pelosi a nefarious actor here? You really do have to start to ask those questions when you consider some of the stuff going on. We're going to talk about it. We're going to dive in. We're going to get straight to the point. I don't want to hold you up. Let's get this show started. So, like I stated earlier, one of the new leading killers of Americans is not Nancy Pelosi, just in case you thought that's what I was alluding to when I started this show or by looking at the title of this show. Essentially, COVID-19 has become the third leading cause of death, unfortunately, for Americans this year. If you know the numbers, we are somewhere in the 170,000 plus individuals that have died here in America. If you look at the number of deaths, however, this year and you compare them to last year, quite frankly, the estimates are by some a little bit higher. I've heard somewhere around like 210,000 people have died due to COVID-19. But those are just estimates. Those aren't the official numbers. The official numbers we're being given are somewhere around 170 something thousand Americans have lost their lives now. So those numbers again have moved COVID-19 to now being the third leading cause of death for Americans. I've actually attached in the link in the description box below a link where you can look at a map that tracks the virus. And I want you to take a look at that. I mean, I know in the very beginning when all of this happened or when we started to hear about this, right, we were really inundated with maps and numbers and facts and figures. And some people may have found themselves kind of complacent with that, choosing to deliberately ignore maps and facts and figures. But I'm asking you very kindly, if you would, just look down in the description box and look at the link that says map to track the virus, because you really do need to see the amount of devastation that this virus is causing, not just here in the United States, but worldwide. Because quite frankly, I think the fact that people aren't seeing it is what's causing a problem. I'm not placing blame here. I'm just reiterating the importance as I see it for you taking a look at this map, because we all, myself included, have gotten unfortunately to a place where we don't want to look at the numbers. We don't want to look at the maps and the facts and the figures, but they're here. We have them. Why not take a look at them so we can truly understand what this virus is doing, not just here in America, but across the world. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Be sure to check out our Facebook page, which you can find a link to it in the description box of this episode. If you come on over to our Facebook page, you'll find that we talk more about the issue of COVID-19 economic stimulus and relief. I hope to see you over there. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show. Let's talk about negotiations regarding this fifth stimulus package. I've to this point, very generally, when I've talked about either stimulus checks or Unemployment, I've really refrained from naming specific individuals, specific politicians, but I'm ditching that today. Today, I'm calling someone very specifically by name, and that person is Nancy Pelosi. Let's talk about what she's done. Let's talk about kind of her part in all of this. She has turned down an offer that would have extended the $600 in unemployment benefits, as some call it, that would have been received by those who were unemployed who have now gone without those benefits since the 31st of July. Republicans, they were the ones who were calling for that extension. So, I mean, it's very easy to say, hey, well, Nancy did the wrong thing here. But here's the deal, guys. The Republicans rather, they only wanted to have that extension for 1 week. So who's to say that Republicans wouldn't have agreed to continual weekly extensions until there could be a consensus reached. It's very early in the morning and I have not had my coffee. So if I cannot speak clearly, I apologize for that. Who's to say that a consensus would not have, we wouldn't have been in a position where the Republicans would have offered weekly extensions until a consensus was reached. I mean, that most certainly could have been the case. But on the flip side, what also could have been the case. Before I even get to that second possibility, I do think that as we consider possibilities here, we do need to consider facts. And one of the facts that we have to consider when considering that possibility is the fact that Republicans put forth a new skinny bill, which we'll talk about very briefly a little bit later in this segment. But that skinny bill considered leads me, in all of my lack of wisdom here, leads me to believe that it is unlikely that they would have gone along with regular weekly extensions of that $600 until they would have come to a consensus regarding that $600 in an actual bill. So then you have to ask the question, did she do the right thing by not accepting something that for some would have caused a lot of uncertainty? I mean, you could, argue that people, specifically unemployed people, are dealing with a lot of uncertainty regarding that $600. You do have unemployed people, whether it's online in forums or online on social media networks, in YouTube videos, whatever the case might be, you do have them expressing their questions regarding, hey, is this thing coming back? On the flip side, you have unemployed individuals who are saying, you know what, given everything I've seen and the fact that, Republicans are now proposing a skinny bill, there's no way this is coming back. Maybe the best we can do is this $300 that comes from the executive order that was signed by President Trump. Because again, negotiations ended, real negotiations, or as real as they have been or can be in this current situation, they ended about 2 weeks ago, and we really haven't seen them return. But again, I really do kind of pose the question, did we ever really see negotiations to begin with? We saw one party and its leadership come to the table, and we saw another party send its minions to the table. But okay. Then there was a little bit of hope regarding the unemployment benefits. And I'm not just going to talk about the unemployment benefits. I'm talking about both unemployment benefits and stimulus checks. There was a little bit of hope because earlier in this week, we've been dealing a lot with the buffoonery regarding the U.S. Postal Service and, the changes that we've seen there and the impacts, not only that it's foreseeable that they will have in the election, considering that a lot of people are probably going to be voting by mail-in ballot. We've started to see the implications of those changes now, with mail being delivered very, very slowly. And it really beginning to wreak havoc in the lives of a lot of people, right? But she earlier had announced plans to vote on something called the Delivering for America Act, which was an act that is being proposed to address, again, the buffoonery going on with the U.S. Postal Service. And it would provide funding to the Postal Service and work to actually prohibit some of the operational changes, such as removing, the mail sorting equipment, so on and so forth, that has been causing problems. But at the time that she proposed this, she was asked if we could also, since we're already here, since we're already attending this party, since we're already here at this shindig, why not just take up a vote on stimulus checks and the $600 at the same time? She refused to do this, okay? Which begs the question, is she only working to protect the jobs of those who are up for reelection and not really working to protect the jobs of Americans? What do I mean by that? There has been report after report after report after report on the impact of the $600, the impact of stimulus checks. Quite frankly, because the $600 are recurring, because they happen on a weekly basis, that economic stimulus occurred every week for people, it had more of an impact than the one-time stimulus checks. And because of that level of impact, they successfully contributed to growth in our economy. They successfully contributed to us not seeing the level of economic damage that was expected, given everything that we've gone through, given, the changes that we've seen to the GDP, given everything that has been done and caused as a result of this pandemic, right? This is not the result of mass number of Americans deciding to just walk off their job because they've had enough and they're just protesting. This is because we've got a killer outside. The third leading cause of death for Americans here in the United States, COVID-19. But so, you could look at the decisions she's making and you could say, well, okay, I see the impact that not addressing the issues with the Postal Service will cause. We need to rectify it because we have to protect our elections that get politicians put into office or keeps them in office, right? So she's protecting those people. But is she protecting the jobs that are created or kept as a result of economic stimulus? I mean, you could look and you could say, well, no, she's not. There is a risk. We talk a lot, especially as we talk about what's going on with the Postal Service. We talk about the risk of not protecting the elections, the risk of just letting this continue and trying to talk and fix it later. We briefly talk about that, but we don't talk a lot about it because we understand that that's nuts. Like, we have to address it. But why have we stopped talking about the risks associated with not addressing our need for economic stimulus with regard to stimulus checks and with regard to the $600? So a letter was written to Nancy Pelosi by a Democratic member of the House, and she put it like this. She said that we need to bring up a simplified, straightforward COVID-19 relief package. I provided a link below to the letter she wrote Pelosi. But the letter in total pretty much calls for extended unemployment benefits through, at the very least, the end of the year, which isn't that much longer to go, right? It also calls for an eviction moratorium, continuation of the payroll protection program. It calls for another stimulus check, and it asks for other things, but those first few things were some of the main things that it called for. Again, uh, continuation of the PPP. And quite frankly, I've got my issues with the PPP. I think that in some regards it worked, but when you look at, or when we try to examine the level of effectiveness compared to other forms of stimulus that we have seen, I'm not sure that it, quite frankly, was the most effective. But that's another show for another day. But so, getting back to the letter also it stated this. It said, and I'm quoting directly from it: "Finally, I must insist that the next package does not include special favors and handouts." What could she have been talking about? Okay, not only in the proposal by the Democrats, we saw special favors to specific industries, but we also saw special favors that she knows Republicans will never go for. Now, I will tell you this: our organization, when we made the shift, like I said, I've mentioned it several times in various episodes. We used to focus on social issues, and we, it's only fairly recently that we decided to have COVID-19 economic stimulus and release as our sole issue of focus. But when we made the decision at the board level to focus on this issue, one of the things that we had to contend with was the fact that it was kind of one of those lesser of two evils situations. Uh, did we agree with everything that was proposed by the Democrats? Absolutely not. Did we want to see everything in their bill? Absolutely not. But I think it's very imperative that people realize here that you are never going to get everything that you want. You are never going to get America, which is full of many, many, many individuals with individual interests, individual responsibilities, individual perspectives, individual life experiences. You were never going to get everybody to see everything as you see it, and as a result, give you exactly what you want. We recognize that. I'll be right back. So, you're never going to get everyone to see everything as you see it, and as a result, give you exactly what it is that you want to see. So, again, at the board level, we said, you know what? While we don't agree with everything that they are proposing, it is, again, a situation where we have to look at what is going to do the least amount of damage here. What is going to not just do the least amount of damage, but provide a maximum amount of support. Well, what Nancy and other Democrats proposed, what they brought to the table, was not just a need for stimulus checks for Americans. It was not just the extension of the $600 the $600 extended unemployment benefits for the unemployed. It also include bailout and money for people who are in this country in a manner that's not consistent with our laws. Those that who, some people call them illegal, even though, as they say, no person is illegal, but those that are here in this country illegally, or who remain in this country illegally. And she knew from the very beginning, Republicans, they'd never go for that. I mean, look at what not just Trump, but other Republicans pushed as their selling point in the last election cycle. Look at the primary reason Trump was elected. It had to do with addressing illegal immigration, which for a lot of people is a sticking point. If you don't know, that was one of the issues that we focused on and fought against. We as an organization did not want to support people coming here in a manner that did not comply with our laws. But despite that, again, lesser of two evils. But she knew. She very well knew. Nancy is a very, very, very smart woman. She could not have been in politics this long and been naive and have been completely aloof. She knew exactly what she was doing. On the same day that she was given a letter from Democrats asking to address everything recently that's been going on with the Postal Service, Democrats also, in a letter, asked Nancy to consider something, legislation that is called Worker Relief and Security Act. And that proposal, that bill would have reinstated the $600 weekly unemployment economic stimulus, which after Wednesday's show, if you haven't noticed, by the way, one of the things that I have decided is that I am no longer calling it an unemployment benefit. I'm calling it an unemployment economic stimulus. We want to talk about the economic stimulus for companies. Let's talk about the economic stimulus for the unemployed, the economic stimulus for Americans in the form of stimulus checks. Let's stick to the facts and call stuff what it is, economic stimulus. But anyways, that's what I've decided I'm going to do. You can do what you want to do. But getting back to my point here, if you don't know, there are a group of fiscally conservative Democrats, and I know that sounds like a phrase that just does not make any sense, since typically Democrats are the ones who, they're the ones who aren't necessarily framed as fiscally conservative, which I might propose kind of rethinking that line of thought. I'm not going to get into that, but they're seen as, Democrats aren't typically seen as fiscally conservative, but they're a group of self-labeled fiscally conservative Democrats, which again are a thing. And they have addressed the fact that they want negotiations that, as I've addressed earlier, have ceased as of approximately 2 weeks ago. They've addressed their desire to see these negotiations continue. However, they've done so without identifying a specific unemployment economic stimulus amount. Okay, so they're not saying, oh, we are, like you, demanding that we want to see this $600, which brings to light for a lot of people, because as a lot of people have been hearing it and seeing it in the media, they might be under the assumption that every single Democrat is in agreement that this $600 is absolutely necessary. They may be under the impression that every single Democrat is telling Nancy, hey girl, go girl, hold out. That's not the reality here. There are Democrats who don't support unemployment economic stimulus in the amount of $600. Point is, Pelosi is not budging. But here's the deal. Or the question I pose, rather. Is she not listening? We don't know. We don't know if she is taking the actions she is taking because she is literally like hearing them but not actively listening. This is where I want to use everything I've just stated to you, everything that we've been kind of talking about here. This is where I want to kind of bring you to this point. And this is the point that this is where politics breaks down to reinforce your personal beliefs, as it's always done. I want you to see the game here. I want you to see the bigger picture. That's exactly what it is. Before I kind of like break down this picture for you, let me break it down. We all have, we all hear about, bias, and how bias is like this bad thing and you need to not be biased. But here's the deal. All of us, I don't know, Democrat, Republican, black, white, gay, straight, male, female, non-male, alien, whatever. I can't even go down that rabbit hole. But um, the we all have biases, okay? And they are shaped by our experiences. Now, are some of them detrimental, not just to others, but to ourselves? Absolutely. Maybe you had a bad experience. And mind you, I'm saying this, well, I'm not going to expose that, but maybe you are saying that you don't trust Black people and Black people are dangerous. Maybe it's because you live in an area or that is that has a lot of crime, and the crimes that you have seen have been, uh, unfortunately done by a lot of Black people. Can I blame you if that's the only experience you know? Can I blame you and say that you are just some horrible person who wants to go out there and hate Black people? Is it fair to say that you're just a horrible person when that may be the only reality that you know? That every time you turn on the news, you see, nothing but not just Black people, but, let's maybe Hispanic people. All you see is, or a majority of what you see in terms of like the mug shots on TV. Can I blame you? Can I blame you if you have this hatred for men, if your personal experience is filled with nothing but men that have abdicated their responsibility as fathers, who have not taken personal responsibility, maybe someone who has physically or sexually or mentally abused you, man after man after man, broken relationships, broken homes? Can I blame you if you negatively see them in that way? This is a big piece of the conversation that does not get had, especially in this age of, you know, what is the term that they use? Political correctness, where where we say that bias is wrong and it's bad. Why do we never have the conversation about addressing the bias? Because bias is the main thing when it comes to politics. They are playing on bias. You're going to fall into one of two camps. You are going to see things in a way that fits into class A, or see things in a way that fits into class B. It's very rare that you have C, D, E, F, G, other options for kind of seeing things. The majority, which is what politics serves here, the majority falls into A or B. And where you fall is based upon your experiences. So how, somebody please tell me how we have this conversation, not about the economic stimulus, but just basically about Nancy. How do we have this conversation about Nancy and everything that she's either done or not done without it being shaped by either our personal lived experiences or our personal experiences with Nancy? For example, if I don't acknowledge the fact that I socially, on social issues, fall on the completely different side of the aisle than Nancy, I could easily, find myself in the camp of saying, Well, Nancy, she's just this nefarious actor. She's wrong. She's, just completely just villainizing Nancy. Not understanding that even if I do disagree with her on the issue, it's being tainted by the fact that I completely disagree with the woman on abortion. In my personal opinion, if you want Brittany's opinion, I believe if Nancy could be handing abortions out on the corner, she would. And she'd probably be personally doing them herself. I'm willing to admit that. That's the view that I have of Nancy, because I do not agree in the slightest bit with her on the issue of abortion. But because I'm able to admit my bias regarding that, and because I'm willing to have that conversation with myself, I'm also equally able to say that on certain things, I do agree with her on. But we have too many people trying to enter this conversation, not being willing or able to recognize, let alone say, where they actually have biases. Pelosi wrote a letter that suggested, after she started getting letters from members of her caucus, she wrote a letter back, and she said that people need to consider the timing and strategic value of what everyone else has offered thus far. And those two things, timing and strategic value, need to be reconsidered. I linked the letter below. But tying that to what I just said about bias, and considering the fact that Nancy is not budging, I want you to consider this. What has been her hill to die on? What has she been willing to sacrifice everything for? Is it stimulus checks? No. The Republicans and the Democrats agree on the $1,200 stimulus checks for people. Is it aid for state and local governments? Yes, that is absolutely her hill to die on. It's not even the unemployment benefits. This is where your beliefs about Nancy are going to get reinforced. What do I mean by that? You are either going to see her willing to die on the hill for state and local governments as something where she is just like this horrible person who is willing to sacrifice everything, as the president says, to bail out her poorly managed state and other poorly managed Democratic states. You're going to have that view. Or you could have the view that, hey, she recognizes that we're in unprecedented times, and she's looking at the data to see the impact that these unprecedented times are having on states and local governments. And as a result, she realizes that we can't just deal with one part of the equation, the unemployed people, the Americans and businesses, without looking at what we're doing to the states and being willing to help them. This is where your beliefs get reinforced. Am I telling you not to have those beliefs? No, I never would, because it's not possible. It is not possible. Anyone who tells you to not have any bias at all, they're nuts. Absolutely nuts. And they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I'm telling you. I am telling you. But this is where your beliefs, they get reinforced. And just how I'm not wrong to say, or excuse me, just how it would be wrong, in my opinion, in Brittany's opinion, it would be wrong for me to be completely enraged with someone who is scared of, just say, minorities, because they've seen nothing but negative experiences and they personally have had nothing but negative experiences. You can't, if somebody, not even just like fear because they think minorities are dangerous, but maybe they're walking around thinking that all minorities or women are stupid or not intellectual or not just dumb. Yeah, that sucks to have that. I kind of actually look down on people with pity who have certain ideas, because it's like you're missing out on like a whole group of cool people that you're not going to get to know because you have those biases, right? But my point here is maybe they're walking around thinking that just say like all women are just dumb or all minorities are dumb. And it's unfortunate that they have those views because, like I said, they're going to miss out on some really awesome people. But I can't, walk around saying, hey, you're this horrible person and you're sent from Satan. And I can't walk around like that because I don't know their personal experience. Their personal experience might be that every person that they have ever come across who has been a person of color, a minority, or a woman may have been the absolute epitome of ignorance. Maybe they didn't, speak in a way that was what some would deem proper. And so they just walked around thinking, well, hey, everyone that I've met, again, I'm not condoning this, but I'm just saying you are a fool if you were acknowledging that there are some people who live in very small bubbles, and those small bubbles have unfortunate people who fill the role of characters, and they see characters in a very specific light based on their experiences. Not because they necessarily choose. There are people who choose. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, but for most people, it's their experiences. And the same here can be said about what you believe about Nancy and her being willing to die on the Hill for aid to state and local governments. I'm going to close with this. Everyone has been talking recently, or at least started to talk about, the fact that Trump and Republicans have proposed this new skinny stimulus bill. I wish it actually was skinny, because you know what? I would take a dose of that and like cut myself in half. Plastic surgery, on a kind of a tangent here. I've really been like, it's something that it's like I want, but I don't know, I'm kind of terrified about it. But anyways, so Trump and Republicans, Trump, and see, here we go with the nefarious actor kind of deal. Do you believe I called him a she because I'm taking a dig at him? What do you really believe about me? Or do you believe that was a genuine mistake? It's based on your bias regarding me. But anywho, they have proposed this new skinny stimulus bill, and everyone from the top down knows that Nancy is absolutely going to reject this bill. Guys, it's half of what the Republicans first proposed. Remember, they were on their heel of $1 trillion. This new thing is $500 billion. It is, again, half. Not half of what they were willing to come up to, but half of what they originally proposed. But here's my question to you. What is your reason for believing that she's going to reject it? If you believe that she's going to accept it, you're nuts, and I'm not even talking to you. But for the people who here are like using their minds, and they're like, no, she's going to reject it. What is your reason for believing she's going to reject it? Is it because you think that she is literally not actively listening here, listening to members of her caucus, listening to the people who are not in her caucus on the other side? Is she just willfully not listening? Is she not capable of listening because she's just, what's your belief there? Or is it the fact that you think that she's this nefarious actor in the equation and she's just out there for blood? Let's start thinking about these things a little bit deeper and get off this surface level stuff about bad guy, good guy. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Be sure to check out our Facebook page, which you can find a link to it in the description box of this episode.
If you come on over to our Facebook page, you'll find that we talk more about the issue of COVID-19 economic stimulus and relief. I hope to see you over there. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show. All right, so that's the show for this Friday, August 21st. I hope I ended this week with this show where I want you to kind of think about some things. I want you to question why you hold the beliefs you do, not just generally about political issues or, the general things, like, well, maybe you support economic stimulus because you need economic stimulus. I'm not talking about those things that have very easy answers, but I want you to think about why you feel the way you do or think that politicians or specific politicians take specific actions. Why do you fall into camp A or camp B of thinking, again, that they're nefarious and they're just these horrible people who are out to burn down America? Is there proof to suggest why you hold your beliefs? And again, I'm not saying that your beliefs are wrong, because they're based on your experiences or your worldview. I don't know. All I know is there's a new cause of death that is literally going to, I'm at the point where I'm like on the fence about ordering a hazmat suit. Like, every time I leave the house, let me strap up. And I don't mean like strap up like a condom. Even though, I'm kind of wondering, maybe they should just make like big condoms for people like step into or pull over themselves. I don't know. But I'm like literally debating getting a hazmat suit. I have been for some time. And I'm very super serious, like super, super serious. But, so we're dealing with that. And in the midst of everything that we're dealing with, I really just want all of us, myself included, to not just be willing to examine why we assume certain things about politicians, but be willing to be honest with ourselves about it. Be willing to be honest. Because too many people in these conversations are not being honest, even when it's abundantly clear to other people why they assume the things that they do. And I don't want you to just do this for yourself. I want you to get in the habit of doing this so that way, when you are inundated with viewpoints and propaganda via various sources of media, you can understand why they are pushing certain perspectives at you, or why they are trying to sway things to be in a certain way. Sometimes it's super obvious and sometimes it's not. I don't know. Anyways, have a good weekend. I am just getting my day started. I've got a lot to do. Kind of on a side note, we've kind of have this, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about that. But anyway, y'all have a good day. I know I will. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Pack Politics podcast. I'm your host, Brittany McDowell. I will see you here next Monday. Have a good one. Stay safe. Literally, stay safe. And if you have to do like me to avoid the third leading cause of death here in the United States, consider getting a hazmat suit.